Welcome back, everybody, to our final panel of the evening, in which our representatives from Red Umbrella Sweden, PION, and Red Umbrella Iceland will be sharing their thoughts on the future of public policy, the impact of the end demand laws and how they affect us in each of our countries, and why it is that sex worker organizations and advocates advocate for full decriminalization of sex work. We have the wonderful Carol Queen moderating, and let's go. I'm very excited.
I thank you so much, Leo. And of course, we have Lilith back from Norway. We have Poppy back from Sweden. And Renata is joining us from right here in Iceland. Yes. And I came all the way from San Francisco. So it's a miracle I'm sitting up and awake and talking to you right now. The goddesses of sex work are holding me up. All right. We have a little bit of a topic, right, that you've just heard, and I want to give Renata a chance to do some introductory remarks also, and then we're going to get right to your questions. You're first. And then work them. But first I want to tell you that I visited Europride when it was in Stockholm. First time I believe that it was there in 1998. I know you were all born after that, but I'm here to tell you that all the way back then there was an amazing Europride. Dana International won the music, whatever it was, and it was very exciting. I have Swedish heritage as well as Norwegian, so that was really exciting. And also, they gave me a young sex worker as my guide, prescient, and as she walked me around and told me more about the city and made sure I got to the right places for my panels at the right time, etc., she told me with some anger that there were new laws on the horizon. They hadn't, I believe, been enacted yet, but they were about to, and guess what she was talking about? The Swedish model and demand, and even before it impacted their working conditions, it was impacting their working conditions because their clients were starting to hear about it. They were freaking out, getting paranoid, getting irritable. I don't want to ask anyone who doesn't want to out themselves as a sex worker, current, former, or future, because AI is coming. That was not really a very funny joke, was it? To out yourselves, but I'm going to tell you that I think all of you can imagine that a cranky, paranoid client is not your best client. They are not as charming as usual when that all happens. And of course, you know, we've got some bad trick lists that then we have to add some people to, which is sad if they were nice before. And of course, bad trick lists are not what people who want to get sex work connection really want. They really want better social skills. Why aren't we having laws about that? Anyway, don't get me started. What I really want to impart to you is simply that over 25 years ago, the Swedish sex workers saw this shit coming. And we're talking about things today that now have been established as the worries were true. So I think if they were able to establish a new model of dealing with sex work-related legal issues, then others will be capable of establishing a new set of laws or repealing some laws that might change things again for the better for those of us who have been impacted by all of this. Just a thought to share, to lay on your hearts. That's all from me for now. But I want to introduce Renata again, and please let us know more about what you're wanting to share with us about yourself and the topic if you want. And I think you also have something about the topic. So yeah. We're going to get to you very soon, though. Please, Renata.
Hi, my name is Renata, and I'm part of Red Umbrella Iceland. It's been very valuable to find that community. I initially became introduced to sex work when I started stripping when I was living in Berlin. And that was very interesting. I had a lot of internal conflict at first because of the sort of societal stigma that had been echoing in my mind. And then I started questioning it, and I started seeking out other sex worker voices, and really just learning about our experiences in this industry. Later, I became an online sex worker and have been doing that on and off. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Poppy, do you want to?
I mean, I feel, speaking specifically on the law side of the decrim, I've collected a few quotes that I wanted to read, because I have no idea if I ever get this opportunity again, and I'm way out of depth. So I brought, since I said it earlier for those who were here from the start, that I'm only amplifying my organization, and I'm a representative, not for just me, but for, you know, everybody. So I've talked to a bunch of people, and I've talked to my members, and yada yada, and I collected a few of memorable quotes that I wanted to, like, on the subject. Bear with me. Intentions aren't enough. If a law is meant to protect people, but it ends up isolating, endangering, and punishing them, should we rethink it? Like, we're on subject, right? But in reality, sex workers are evicted, lose custody of children, get kicked out of shelters, are deported, all because of their work attract criminalized clients. They're punished by association. Cause and effect, right? Clients are now scared of being caught, so they rush meetings and avoid being screened, meaning sex workers can't assess risks, negotiate safely, or call for help. Again, many sex workers are in vulnerable situations, but not all see themselves as victims. Also important note. How can you leave if you don't feel safe calling the police, or can't find housing, or lose income because you're too scared to seek help? If a law is meant to protect people, if a law meant to protect people is making their lives more dangerous, should we still defend it? Or should we listen, learn, and do better? So, that's my quotes. I have a quick paragraph, because I have no idea when I get this opportunity again. So I'm here from Sweden, right? And I'll be honest, I'm not proud of what we exported under the banner of the Nordic model. Sweden has wrapped its prostitution laws in the language of gender equality and human dignity. But let's be real here, it's moralism dressed up as progress. We've built a system not on evidence, not on harm reduction, not on voice of sex workers, but on a Christianized idea of sexual purity. The so-called Swedish model criminalizes the buyer while claiming to protect the seller, but in practice, it drives sex work underground, isolates those who are in the trade, and increases their vulnerability. It doesn't dismantle power, it just hides behind closed doors. If this model worked, we'd see reduced harm, safer lives, fewer people in exploitative conditions, but we don't. What we see is stigma, surveillance, a state that decides whose choices are valid and whose are not. When you say you're criminalize the buyer to help the seller, you're still building policy on the idea that sex work can't ever be legitimate, and that those who sell sex aren't capable of agency. And that's not feminism, that's paternalism. We don't need laws based on shame, we need laws based on evidence, safety, and human rights. Iceland, don't follow us down this path. You can do better than a model built on guilt, stigma, and selective morality.
Yeah, thank you.
On that note, I'm ready to avoid as many questions as
Splendid.
I also had a little speech prepared, so I just forgot to
Go for it.
include it. It's not so long, but Sex workers and survivors of prostitution need rights, legal ownership of their own bodies, and for their agency to be respected. We have had reports from sex workers who have tried to seek help from police after domestic violence, where it becomes known that the survivors are doing sex work and the police refuses to take the cases further because of that. In our opinion, this shows severe misunderstanding of both sex work and consent. Sex workers, just like non-sex workers, can withdraw their consent anytime, and just because you consent to sex once does not mean you consent again. And just because you sell sex, it doesn't mean you should be abused at home. That is not normal. It is clear that both survivors of prostitution and sex workers want changes to the laws. The most common thoughts from our service users regarding the laws: stop criminalizing advertising, stop criminalizing landlords, we want to be able to hire security, for police to be a safe place to report violence, take seriously when we do report violence against us, stop taking our wages, stop spying on us to catch clients. It makes our work less safe and it affects our income. They also want the police to be educated on the nuances of sex work. Regarding the safety of even approaching the police, sex workers and survivors of prostitution report not feeling safe or able to report violence against them because they see in the media police taking wages. They see women being charged for advertising, sometimes even after seeking legal recourse after violence. They are scared they will not be taken seriously. They are terrified that their involvement in sex work would be registered in the police systems. This is especially bad for migrant women because it has an effect at the border. They are scared for their involvement in selling sex will go on their record. They are scared of social stigma. They are scared of losing their apartment. Migrant women selling sex are scared of being deported. Thank you.
Did you write anything down, Lilith?
I have not written a large paragraph down, no.
If you want to speak to this, that's great,
Yeah.
and or we can go to questions, whatever is right for you.
I feel I have already said a lot about this, but it of course bears repeating that when you implement a law, you do that with intentions. And if the practical effects of the law does not match your intentions, you had better reconsider and re-implement and fickle with your laws a bit. Otherwise, the actual actions are going to be interpreted as your intentions. And when we see that sex workers have experienced going to the police and being told you can't be raped because you paid for this, that tells me that the sex workers experiencing sexual violence is not it's not an outlier, it's an intention of the law to experience sexual violence without being able to report it. That has a really, really bad name. That's called state-approved sexual violence. And in any other world, that would be called a war crime.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's been allowed to exist is horrifying, beyond belief. Yeah. So, we really need to take a step back sometimes and see what are the practical, what are the actual consequences of this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well said. Now, we had a two-part question last time, and we only answered the first part. My bad.
I feel like you've answered
Do you?
the second part.
Do you?
I mean, the second part was, are people going to the police?
Yeah, it was about police. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like they aren't. But with that change.
It happens. It for sure happens, but only on extreme occasions. There has to be some kind of extreme violence. It's not just crossed boundaries. It's just not enough. And if we're gonna go on depth of rape, then all of a sudden it's just like, was it enough rape? Like, you know what I mean? Like, are they gonna believe me? You know what I mean? Like, crossing boundaries. If something happened that you didn't agree on, it should be reported. But the follow-up is gonna have so much repercussions if it's just like a misdemeanor. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a big of enough crime.
Yeah. Yeah, I also want to add that how you approach sex workers today, it kind of reflects on how you approach the sex in law as a whole. Because when you conflict sex work with exploitation and trafficking, and when you as a police officer see that this person has accepted this, therefore they have accepted all of this other, that tells me you see sex as giving up your whole self. And that does not vibe well with my understanding of consent. To be clear, Norway just implemented a new consent basis of law within sexual crimes and such. That you have to actively consent to every part of the sex you're intending to be a part of, and that's a good thing. That's a good, healthy approach to sexuality, and it does not vibe with the cutting all sex workers over one comb, as we say. I did not find a proper translation for that in time. But, like, yeah, you can't see sex work as accepting sexual violence. If you're in the same breath gonna talk about bodily autonomy and consenting to such and such, and you can't do that. You're either in the mindset of when you're having sex, you're giving away all of your rights to everything, or you're in the mindset that this is a person that's consenting to such and such thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Who has a question or something that they want to share based on this? I see a hand back there, Anita, and then you and you and you. So far, I've got those. I know that was so clear, wasn't it? Please, Anita, go ahead. And Caitlin, you saw which people I pointed to also, right? You didn't. Okay, we'll get there. We'll get there. Go ahead.
I don't know why I'm nervous. How we feel about the feminists who say when you are buying sexual services, you are purchasing rape.
Say that again?
The question was, how do you feel about feminists who say that when you're buying sex, you're purchasing rape?
Well, that comes back to what do you mean when you say sex? What is sex to you?
What is feminism to this person?
Like, is sex giving up your whole bodily autonomy? Because I don't think that's a healthy way to look at sex. When I have sex, I say to the person or people I'm with, I want to do this and this and this, and I'm not okay with this and this and this. And if I were engaging in, I don't know, call it self-rape, or self-harm through sexual violence, then that would mean giving up all of me. And giving up my right to choose. And that is not what sex work is. Sex work is actively informed consenting to an act. It's making an informed decision that you have control over. Rape is something else entirely. It's taking away the opportunity, the right to choose.
I can draw a quick parallel to the BDSM scene. So I've done a bunch of dom work, and I've sold myself both as a submissive and the top, you know. So in the BDSM scene, it's the sub that's in control, because the sub is the one setting all the boundaries, all the rules, what they want to achieve, and their boundaries and their safe word and yada yada. And the top is supposed to just follow the guidelines. And their main goal and their main rule is that to keep their sub as safe as possible. Otherwise, you'll fail as a top and a dom, and you completely failed. And in the matter of selling yourself as an active choice of rape, I just don't agree. You're far out of line.
It's like a form of victim blaming.
Kind
if
of,
you're
yeah.
saying that.
It's very much victim blaming,
Yeah.
yes. And it's I don't see that as feminism. I see that as actively harming other women, because you're taking away women's rights to choose, which is the most anti-feministic thing I've heard for a good while.
Yeah, for sure.
And the other thing it is propaganda.
Yeah.
It's a way of using words and notions that people think they understand, and often do understand, to, you know, it's black is white, up and down, 2 and 2 equals 5. It's not in line with reality. And the only way it works is for people to repeat it over and over and over again. So that's just something to call out, right?
It's actually something we've dealt with here in Iceland, is that certain sex worker exclusionary feminists have written about how making porn is raping yourself. And like automatically it's just like you being a perpetrator and a victim. And it always just confuses me so much. It takes your right to consent or your bodily autonomy completely away from you and just makes up how you feel instead of you being able to decide how you feel.
And also, I will say it muddies the water when you're talking about actual victims of sexual violence. It's the same when you mix together sex work with trafficking and exploitation. It creates a muddied water. Like, if this is exploitation, if this is rape, how do you then approach like the actual rape victims, actual victims of exploitation? Like, it makes the system designed to help victims of horrible violence actively worse. You're actively harming people who have been exposed for the worst crimes humanity has dragged out of the mud imaginable. And you're calling that feminism. You dare call that supporting women. Fucking shame on you. Shame on whoever thought of that idea.
Yes.
It's the most misogynistic thing I've heard all week.
So, you got somebody? Okay, good. And then we're going to move to 2 people in front, first row, second, yeah, first row. And then I see somebody over there, yeah? And I see you. All right, let's see how we do.
Yeah, so I have many comments and questions, but there isn't infinite time, so I'll try to be focused. Lilith just mentioned the victims of sexual violence, and the end-demand approach was created supposedly to protect trafficking victims. That was the alleged intention. I don't believe that was the real intention. I agree that it was largely or exclusively a moralistic law and approach. But let's talk about the victims of trafficking, actually, for a moment, because I think that people forget that trafficking happens behind closed doors, and the only ones who can actually report it to the police are willing sex workers and clients. It has traditionally been clients that report trafficking to the police. So I had seen statistics from Sweden the last few years where it seemed like trafficking had gone down, but I think there just aren't clients that can report it anymore. Like, nobody can actually go to the police and say, oh, I had a booking, but I think that person is being trafficked. I think she's being coerced, she's being abused, she's scared, she's whatever. So that's one thing I wanted to comment. And I had another question that I actually wanted to ask the previous panel, but there was no time, because Logan mentioned safety contacts, and I'm not sure whether everybody in the audience, whether everybody knows what that is. That's basically a person, it can be a friend or a family member, who knows where you are as a sex worker, and can check on you, or you can call when you arrive at your appointment, if you do an out call, whatever, and when you're done, and say that you're fine, it all went well, and that person can call the police, presumably, if something happens to you. Speaking of the safety of sex workers earlier, I would really like one of you to maybe touch on the subject of what happens to safety contacts as third parties if they actually need to contact the police because the person they're trying to help and support is being harmed. Yeah, was that too long? Should I?
Well,
no, that was a great question.
Well, let's start with safety contacts, as you call them. It depends on, at least in Norway, it depends on the police officer's mood that morning. If you get a police officer who is in the mood of being very anti-sex worker that day, you could get in trouble as someone who is facilitating sex work, because that is a part of the and demand model. Is the third parties are criminalized, and the way it is worded in Norwegian law is it's forbidden to promote the prostitution of others. Mm-hmm. And that can mean anything. It can mean driving your life partner to work. It can mean being a safety contact. It can mean being a receptionist, as we call it. And of course, that does make it a challenge, because having a safety contact is something I would recommend anyone who is in the prospect of dating do.
Yeah.
Just in the prospect of seeing other new people that you don't know. Having a safety contact is it's an important tool for, I will say, everyone. And to deny sex workers that, I mean, clients know that we struggle with this, and so a lot of clients will therefore gamble on us not contacting the police, and so we will then become active targets of criminals that pretend to be clients, or clients who feel entitled to get away with more than they should. To circle back to trafficking, yes. Of course, it matters when clients are criminalized and they don't want to report shit that happens anywhere. And of course, we see that in all forms of exploitation, that people who see it and have the power to say something are not the workers on the inside. They are taking a huge risk if they let anyone know and suddenly become an active part of that. They become a target. So we are kind of relying on third parties to let people know about the exploitation happening. And when you slap clients on the wrist for outing themselves as a client, of course the statistic is going to go down. And I would say the amount of trafficking and exploitation is going to go up, because not only because there's fewer people to report it, but also because the sex workers have now been put in a more precarious situation. They struggle with finding safe places to work. They struggle with finding safe and effective and cost-effective ways of advertising their services. They struggle with finding enough clients to cover their expenses. So, of course, exploitative third parties are going to swoop in and fill that hole. So this exemplifies perfectly that an end-demand model, it does not end demand. It just ends reporting of crime, and it ends what do you call it? Trust in the system.
Yeah. We have a couple of people in the front row over here. Person in a peach-colored sweater.
Oh, okay. Hi. I have a very unformed thought about how the laws seem to maybe never have been intended to make life any better for sex workers. I'm just thinking about how, like, in the news, we sometimes see, like, this and that happen, like women being deported or someone losing their income, or like it very occasionally makes the news in Iceland, but I've never ever seen like a front page with a client on it. Or I've never seen like, oh, this politician or this high up man or just this regular Joe, honestly. Like we see like women that are in sex work or maybe are in exploitative situations in the news, but we never see the clients, we never hear about clients being even, like, is it even enforced? Do the clients even get into any trouble if we're just taking the laws at face value?
Actually, they rarely get into much trouble. Like, they're not very prosecuted by the police. And often it's cited that there's not enough evidence. Meanwhile, sex workers tend to be fined for advertising, have their wages stolen, even after, like I said before, reporting violence against them. And I believe this is also because the main crime is considered to be the client's purchase of sexual services and not the violence that they inflicted.
What we see a lot in Sweden is they do like busts on and they aim specifically for celebrities in Sweden. So every once in a while, there's a celebrity that bought sex, and it's a big fuss about it. And it really makes a lot of ripples and a lot of news. But they do a lot of, and we see that as an organization because, surprise, surprise, sex workers talk to each other. As soon as we get together, we actually communicate. And all of a sudden, you'll see a pattern and be like, this person contacted me, and it's an unusual way to talk to a sex worker. And then somebody else says, yeah, somebody wrote me too. You see a pattern, and it's the police trying to do like a raid. And we do like a little signal to each other. It's like, all right, be careful because they're doing something. And in Sweden, we also see a pattern because there's one person in Stockholm. He is a reporter working 50-50 as it's called something. You write books. You're a writer. You're an author. Works 50-50 for the police as the professional expert in sex work and writing books. So you'll see heavily patterns of, there's a lot of focus on raids now and a lot of media. And then all of a sudden this guy releases a new book. You're like, wait a minute, isn't that, that doesn't feel right. But we've started to see the patterns. We also started to warn each other, so it's becoming more and more difficult. But aiming for celebrities is still a thing in Sweden. A lot of media, when it happens.
In the US, there was a period in the 80s in particular, which was, I think, the run-up to the Swedish model, honestly, where there were some Midwestern cities in particular, I can't remember which ones were especially active, but they started to put photos of clients on billboards. But that didn't last all that long. But the United States is really into shaming, too. I mean, you gotta embrace the tendency to shame, especially hard if you're gonna scare away the maximum number of clients. And I don't know, perhaps at least in Nordic Model context, many of the people are just a little too nice to shame that hard. I don't know. Don't hold me to that. I might be wrong.
Well, yeah. In Norway, we've also seen this, that the client gets away almost scot-free while the sex worker is seen as sort of the source of the crime and therefore the one that needs to get punished, even though it's not punishable in the law, strictly speaking. But that just means that the police gets more inventive, shall we say, in ways where they will allow crime to happen to the sex worker and like tolerate horrible living conditions, and even actively take part in making lives miserable. We saw this. We actually saw this before we got the client criminalization models. Well, where brothel raids were happening. Norway still had brothels at that time, and they were being raided, and the clients were led out the back door, while the women were paraded in front of the street with like a sea of reporters with cameras. We also see this in ways that Iselin talked earlier about Operation Homeless. To expand on what that is, the police will pretend to be a client or follow a client to a sex worker's home. They will then find out who is renting out that place. They will then contact the landlord and inform them, you have a sex worker renting with you. If you don't throw them out, we're gonna prosecute you for pimping. Yeah. And so sex workers have literally gone to the shops for milk and bread and come back to a locked door because the landlord has changed the locks and got rid of all their stuff, of course. And so you see, the laws, they make sex workers more vulnerable to exploitation, and it makes the sex worker the active target of all the misery. So, you know, paint them as you want. The laws are meant to make sex workers miserable.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to make sure I'm not misunderstood, I'm not assuming it would be any better for sex workers if we plastered their faces on the newspapers.
No, I didn't
I was
suggest
just
that
wondering
either.
about, I know.
If you wouldn't mind,
Implementation.
if you wouldn't mind handing the microphone to the person with the hat.
Poppy, I wanted to ask you specifically because you have mentioned that you're kind of speaking on behalf of your community within your organization. Have you had, with the new laws that took hold in I think it was May or April regarding online sex work, specifically OnlyFans and stuff like that, have you had an increase of sex workers coming to your organization? And if so, what has that been like?
I still as I said earlier, I have the big luxury of welcoming new members to the Umbrella organization, which is fantastic. We see a rapid increase of new members, and they're all online sex workers, and they have no idea what to do. Mm-hmm. Or there's one that are super well organized, but thought they were the only one. And then all of a sudden doing research, like, wait a minute, what is this? Applied for memberships, like, yes. So now we have more active activists, which is fantastic. But yes, simple question, there's a lot of new members and a lot of new online sex workers, and they've lost all income in full panic.
Yeah, I wanna draw a parallel to something that happened earlier a few years ago. It was the FOSTA and SESTA laws implemented in the US. Yes. FOSTA and SESTA stands for Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act and the Stop Enabling Sex Trafficking Act. And you think, well, that seems great. I don't like sex trafficking, so I would like that to stop. What it was targeting was personal pages on like Craigslist and stuff, and where people would post ads for meeting up and famously posting sex work ads to meet clients and screen clients and such. And what these sites were enabling were allowing sex workers to screen their clients, to meet clients in a safe manner before they actually met in real life. And of course, trafficking also happened there. The trafficking happens on sex sites. Trafficking also happens on Facebook and Instagram, but we don't talk too much about that. But what the FOSTA and SESTA Acts did was they threw out all the sex workers. So the sites that were actually working with the CIA and the authorities, they stopped working with them. So they stopped sending info about who was probably being trafficked and who was at risk. So you lost that resource at finding and helping victims of trafficking. And what it also did was it made it harder for sex workers to take personal control of their own advertising and their own revenue. So, of course, pimps and third-party exploiters immediately started contacting sex workers, and they said, "You need me now, because you can no longer do this yourself. So you need me to do it for you." So of course, it enabled more trafficking and more exploitation than ever. And I think it's the same stuff that's happening in Sweden right now, that online workers are losing access to making their own content, to having control of the way they perform sex work, and they are being pushed into the harder and the more dangerous forms of sex work that they are not accustomed to. That is not good for them. So, that is. I think that is just two examples of intentions with laws being furthered, and the actions not reflecting those intentions, and then when you're not addressing the fact that your intentions and the actions don't match up, and you still continue moving on with laws, well, then you're not following through with your intentions. At that point, you're just making laws just to set an example, just to follow, your own morals. And I get that. If may I take another minute to, because
sure, and then we have to go back to our
because this is also relevant. In Norway, we have really strict human trafficking laws. Of course, I like that. I like the
I like it.
I like the concept that if you're doing human trafficking in Norway, you risk extremely many years in prison. The bad thing about this is because you risk so many years, the demand for evidence is super high, which means that the human trafficking paragraph is almost never used. So it has been suggested to lower the potential years you risk in prison to enable us to use that law against more human traffickers, to get more people convicted for human trafficking. I think that's a good idea. I think that's a solid idea that it's worth considering. I don't like the idea that human traffickers might get less years than they deserve, but I like the idea that they're actually getting jail time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Uh.
So, yes, and then 2 over here, and that's probably all the time we have. Please ask us. Another person? Wait.
Hi,
Yeah, okay.
I wanted to ask about
Great,
the
okay.
purpose of
Those
the...
last 3.
No, we hear you. It's good.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. The purpose of the Swedish law was implemented in order to protect the sex workers against violence.
So they say.
Yes, and to make them come further easier when it's about when they have an issue with being trafficked or having any legal issue, in order for them to be helped, so the criminality would be reduced. But in fact, this law was more there for propaganda since the feminism came. It was more of a wrong feminist propaganda, and sex works were used and pushed more underground than it should. And I really don't understand why they choose sex workers in this, and they don't punish, for example, porno star movies or platforms that are porno platforms, or why they don't treat adults like adults and they are punishing people for their sexual choices. And it's ridiculous because in 2025 we have these kind of issues once LGBTQ had been into being ashamed for their sexual choices. And somehow I came to the point where I thought it's maybe because it's money involved, but somehow the tax offices, they are not really shy to ask for their share. So, long story short, the problem here is that there are so many laws that were implemented in order to apparently help, but the only thing they help their image in front of this feminist movement. And all these laws, they are not regulated, even the tax laws. They don't have enough regulations for them in order to apply, and because they don't apply, everybody is twisting them, especially Iceland. As you see, they use them in order to shame women, to send them back from the country, to take their money, which, by the way, Sweden made it illegal. But they say they follow the Swedish model. They don't really seem to care to be up to date. They don't want to have clearance. They don't want to come up to have a clear law. And they don't want to make it clear for anyone. And I think even Sweden at this point is doing it better than Iceland.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything specific to add or respond to about that comment?
Sure. Why do we treat sex workers that way? Because people are looking for a group to blame for things, and women with an active sex life is really easy to hate and is in a misogynistically driven society.
I wouldn't call myself a conspiracy theorist, but I think it's massive surveillance.
Yes.
It's an excuse to look into people's phones, monitor people's emails. Yeah. There's no proof and evidence, but it looks like it.
Certainly helps.
It sure does, yeah.
Next person?
Yeah, I had a question when it comes to like prosecutions. Like you talked about a little bit when you go, like if a person has experienced violence, that they would seek out to go to the police. Has there ever been cases of where when persons have gone to the police, that they have been like at least gotten a fine or like gotten like prosecution for like buying?
Well, I don't know exactly what you're asking. Are you asking whether the sex worker or the client have received a fine? Yeah. So what happens when a sex worker goes to the police to report a client, if I understand your question correctly, for sexual violence, is either they meet a very good and understanding police officer and who disregards the sex worker's history of sex work and just treats it as a sexual assault, in which case the sex worker probably shares the fate with about 90% of everyone else who reports a sexual violence, and the case is dismissed. Other option is that the police officer finds a reason to raid the sex worker's home, phone, and or other personal properties, because the police officer will think that because they're a sex worker, they're involved with other crimes. Let's find something to get them at, because they are an undesirable thing in this country. At no point have I ever heard of a client being fined for being a client after a sex worker had reported them. So, you know, food for thought. Yeah.
Thank you. We have a person here and a person here, and those are the last. We might be able to get to you, but I can't guarantee it. Yeah, and then this is, yes.
Hey. Yeah, do you hear me? Yes.
Yes, please.
So my name is Svala, and I come from Matildur, which is the harm reduction organization here in Iceland, and we are service providers. What I'm curious to hear is what are the services? Are there any services in Norway, Sweden, I mean, I know the situation in Iceland, that are focusing on support and healthcare of sex workers? How can you implement service in this framework of the law, the Swedish model? So could you elaborate and give me an insight about what kind of service sex workers have, which are outside of the normal social and healthcare system?
Right. Social healthcare and legal help, legal justice, are the three main parts that a sex worker would want assistance with. So I don't really know what outside of that you would like me to add, but certainly a sex worker will face issues meeting other parts of society. And we have a good resource center in Norway. It's called Pro-senteret, and it's, I think Iselin mentioned it in her project. It's governmentally funded, and it's run in such a way that you can come there as someone with sex work experience, be completely anonymous, and receive counseling, health services, and whatever needs sex workers have, for the most part, at that in the country at that time. And I would really encourage you to go to Pro-senteret, contact them directly, and ask, how are you doing it? Because I really do think that is the optimal way of doing it. Like, listen to what the sex workers are asking for, and provide that as best as you can. Like, the only thing I think is missing at Pro-senteret right now is someone to help me with my taxes. And I really, jokes aside, I really wish that they were a part of them, because not being able to file your company taxes correctly does land you in pretty hot water with your bank and your tax authorities and the like. And
in Sweden, eco-crime is highly prosecuted. Tax fraud or so on and so forth in Sweden is highly criminalized. So not paying taxes is a bad idea.
Yeah, and like, yeah, again, let sex workers be anonymous when they come, help them, assist them as they ask for, in the way they ask for, and yeah, as any other harm reduction strategy, if you need to involve others, then keep the sex worker in the loop.
Yeah.
Mainly, sorry, that wasn't clear, is that how can you implement a service when in this legal framework? I mean, we understand from substance use that we are providing harm reduction services for people who are technically criminalized.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to really navigate the whole legal and regulation framework.
Yes.
And I'm wondering what's the experience of having maybe low threshold services for sex workers in Sweden and Norway under this law. I mean, if we have any problems, do we constantly navigate it? How is the interaction with police?
We also have someone in the audience who can speak to this.
Yeah, yeah. I will start quickly and say that from what I understand, in Sweden it's very, very, very bad. It's very lacking. In Norway, it is tolerated. It is understood that maybe this and this crosses a line, but it is tolerated because it is for the better and good of the people that this exists. And I think that is, yeah, that's a very good starting point. And I wish the people who tolerated that part of providing services to sex work had expanded that view to the rest of sex work.
Yeah, let's let the person who has specific information.
I wanted to add to Svala's question because I work in a similar field. So within my work, I have often served as a safety contact for sex workers, like unofficially, and I'm wondering if you have any examples of those kind of services being provided for isolated sex workers.
So that is not a service I believe PION has ever provided, and that would be a very difficult service for any organization, any collective to provide, at least out in the open, because that is very, in a very real sense, directly violating the law against the promoting the prostitution of others. And yeah, I can only imagine that it's the same in Sweden. And,
oh yeah.
Yeah, and like we get around it, and it does happen that people organize such and such within the communities.
I mean,
what it is under the understanding that this is either borderline or actual criminal.
I feel like we're crossing borders here with just actual social work that includes sex work.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if we were just a part of, normal society and accepted as people and workers, then that we would have been fine. Because we fall on, especially in Sweden, we have all these, safety nets and social work to, catch people in distress. But we're not included. Yeah. If we were included, then we would be safer.
Yeah. And just to expand on what promoting the prostitution of others can mean, a lot of bad people, I would say, have floated the idea that providing free condoms and lube for sex workers could be considered promoting the prostitution of others. And technically, on a legal definition, they could be right. And that's why I said earlier, when you're implementing a law, you need to consider heavily how would the worst people on earth abuse these laws for their own ends,
Yeah.
because they will.
Yeah. One more question.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll keep it simple. So I'm based in the UK where sex work is criminalized, and I see, I've got experience myself and some colleagues who've gone over to places like Germany and the Netherlands because it's legalized, and I know that's not perfect, but many people consider it an improvement. And I'm just curious, in your regions, whether you see the same, whether you see people leaving the country, whether it's to travel or leave permanently because of the legal models.
I see a lot of people moving to Denmark. Because it's not legal, but it's not criminalized, which is, it makes a world of a difference. I'm not even sure I believe in a legalized system, because where we see the legalized prostitution or sex work, it's not necessarily a pretty sight. It comes with a very of different problems, and they haven't really, we haven't really solved it yet. The legalized brothels have a bunch of problems, their own, different problems. And so yeah, Denmark apparently seemed to be where the Swedes are going at the moment.
Yeah, I feel like the terms legalized and decriminalized are mixed together too much. And when you hear the term legalized, you should actually think criminalized except in these specific conditions.
For sure, yeah.
While decriminalized means it's legal, except in these very specific conditions. So it's a very different way of looking at it. And to circle back to your question, I don't really see a difference in people moving back and forth. I see people enjoying themselves better in certain countries than others. The only difference I see is how open people talk about it, and how comfortable people are, being open with their friends, with their family, with their physicians, with the public.
Yeah, I've seen people that do travel, not necessarily just to work in the sex industry, but, you know, to live life and do that also. And it can be a very, you know, convenient way of being able to cover the travel expenses and such. But I've not noticed it in the super large amount. And also I wanted to add to the legalization talk that essentially you can't work independently, and it means that there are specific regulations made for the sex industry rather than have all the existing labor laws and legislation just also cover the sex industry. Because that's how, decriminalization, we already have certain laws that require, managers or bosses or whatever to provide safety and provide all these labor rights. We shouldn't need to have specific labor rights or laws for regulating the sex industry.
What I've been hearing for the last 40 years among organized sex workers, although of course not all sex workers say the same things, as I started off by saying, there's much difference within the sex industry in many, many circumstances, many kinds of people, many identities. But in general, I think it's safe to say that sex workers who have looked at the alternatives often come down on the decrim side of this question, because any degree of state interference in the lives that they live. I mean, homosexuals had to deal with this years ago too, and in some cases still, in some countries still do, that they could not live their lives and conduct their sex lives the way they wanted to. There are going to be people who get targeted in this way, and the targeting that sex workers have been subjected to historically really hasn't gone away in most places. There are very few places around the world that operate on a decrim model, but not very many, and many, many sex workers would like to see many more. So there's more to say about decrim. We don't have another day, but I'd really encourage you all to look up some of the things that people say about this set of questions. It's a robust discussion, and much of what you've heard today is woven through it in terms of what the outcome is for an individual sex worker and for us collectively in a decrim model situation, a legalized and a criminalized model.
If I could add one tiny thing to the decrim talk, is that the decrim model, if we were to implement that here, we would need to do it better, like a little bit better than New Zealand, which is make it decriminalized to not only permanent residents and citizens, but also for migrants.
Well said. Thanks to the panel. Thank you so much, you all. We have already disrespected time a tiny bit, so I really appreciate you all and your insights. Over to you.
So much incredible information. My brain is just like,